Charles, we're back in Central Park.
We've been here before.
It's actually, we're pretty close to the exact same spot we started last week. A lot of people saw our video last week with the Phallus in Wonderland and
Right.
the Alice in Wonderland statue. We'll talk about that in a bit. There remains quite a lot of interest in this triage hospital here in Central Park. I don't know if you've had a chance to see these videos, Charles, but there's an independent filmmaker who's been biking around the city by the name of Lincoln.
There's an ambulance.
Oh, coming into the hospital?
It's the first one we've seen, that I've seen, actually.
Yeah, I see it, but it's unclear if it's pulling into the tent hospital.
You want to come?
Well, we'll go take a look at it, but there's a few things I wanted to talk about here. So this
Sure.
guy, Lincoln Kareem, he's been doing a great job of biking around the city, and he's revealing a lot of things. He's been over there by the Javits Center Hospital, and he's not doing what I'm doing and what you and I are doing, kind of like making a news and commentary show as we walk around. He's doing more of just like a document of everything, and even sort of a stakeout at the Javits, and he hasn't seen one hospital pull up there.
One ambulance.
One ambulance, right, pull up there. I'm just a little distracted to suddenly have a dog show right in front of us.
Right.
But
This is,
cute and lovely dogs.
the Wild Kingdom.
Yes. So what Lincoln has discovered is that he's been to this place for a lot of time, and he's got some real long telephoto lenses. He hasn't seen one ambulance coming or going here. And that other ambulance may well have been going to Mount Sinai Hospital, is right there.
Oh, that's true.
I wanted to show you this, Charles, because this caught my attention, these flowers here.
Yeah.
They stand out because I've shown people that corner down by Christopher Street, remember, where there's like a fence there.
Right.
There's some new building, but on September 11th, that corner in about a day filled up with hundreds of photos of missing people and flowers for lost loved ones. And it's curious that we haven't seen, we've heard about thousands of people dying, but these are the first flowers I've seen anywhere. Why are hospitals, why are these triage morgues, why are these cemeteries, these funeral homes? There's no families, there's no relics whatsoever.
And indeed, I mean, if you look at these flowers, they're old. The ones on the right look wilted. And the handwriting seems to me is the same handwriting.
That's right.
And so you don't really see, you're right, you don't see the kind of spontaneous displays of concern and remembrance that occurred. Now, admittedly, Lady Di's death was much more significant around the world, but I happen to be doing a fair amount of flying in that time period, and it was just amazing the number of, the bouquets of flowers that went in London, even out at the airport, collection plates, which probably were all stolen money. But
But Charles, what about, we've seen trucks with bodies being thrown on there, videos on Twitter. Wouldn't there be families suing for mishandling? Wouldn't there be people at the hospitals trying to get in to see these people? We've heard now a mortician tell us that there's some sort of change in the policy for how long these hospitals are retaining the bodies.
it is going in, I think.
Let's take a look. Let's go over there.
Yeah.
Well, it's driving in front of it.
It just dropped whatever off that it was dropping. But I think what we're seeing here, Jason, is we're seeing the mainstream media already controls the pipes of the mainstream media. They decide, when we were trying, when I was attacked for possibly being the supposed financier of Peter Smith.
Right.
And we had every major mainstream outlet in America coming after me constantly. I would try to explain why I was doing, we better watch out here, why I was doing what I was doing.
Let's talk to this guy.
And
sorry, Charles, one quick second. Let's see if we can talk to this ambulance.
he's not going to talk.
Did you just drop somebody off?
He's not going to talk.
Not going to talk.
Yeah.
Senior care medical services. So that's not,
Well, that's an older person,
right, but it's not
Probably.
Mount Sinai.
Right, but they were dropped there. But the point is, they could be, we had a recent dramatic expansion in the supposed number of COVID deaths, and it was reported numerous different places that the reason for it was estimates of people who had died, who hadn't been tested, and then other estimates of alarming numbers of new people coming out of nursing homes.
Right.
And as we've covered in the past, the older people are going to succumb to causes that could be exacerbated maybe by COVID, but it's unclear and perhaps unfair to attribute the death solely to COVID.
Right.
But there's possibly an example, one older, here's another ambulance actually.
Let's take a look over there.
We're not going to be able to get in there, though.
No, certainly not, but we can, just have a look.
So I was started to say, one of the reasons that we see the narrative controlled in the way it's controlled is that the editors, when I would push back on CNN and Wall Street Journal and all these people, I say, look, this is why I'm doing it. You want to know why I was talking to Peter Smith? Here's what it was. It was to expose the Clinton Foundation. And to a person, they'd all say, oh, our editors won't let us examine that. We can't look at that reason. We can't look at the truth.
Yeah.
And now with social media, there's been an alarming recent set of developments. I'm getting to our followers, my Twitter followers and your followers, I'm getting multiple emails and notices that zero hedge articles, anything that I put out that is counter to the mainstream narrative is being deemed, dangerous, unsafe, whatever. Who makes that decision? Some scruffy jackass with a beard and doesn't know jack about business and economics and finance decides, because he's 1 year out of college, that he's the censor of the internet? I mean, where do they have the right to do that?
Yeah, I think it's Jack Dorsey doing that.
I know.
So, it does appear to be an ambulance in there, and I did see Lincoln Kareem say that he hasn't seen an ambulance come or go from here, so perhaps that's changed. He did see an ambulance waiting near some oxygen tanks, and the driver of the ambulance was smoking cigarettes.
Always a safe thing to do.
I mean, it's insane, but it's an indication that there's staff potentially involved in things that they don't know about. Now, people who saw us last week will recall that there was some bizarre audio interference. I've got a new phone that is allowing me to, I don't want to go into too many details, but I'm able to monitor, so if that problem arises again, I should be able to resolve it very quickly. A lot of people jumped to the conclusion that we experienced some deliberate disruption. I don't know about that. If it does happen again, I'll repost the full video for our sponsors, for my sponsors, on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I actually wanted to tell you a bit of good news, Charles.
What's that, Jason?
Well, I think that a lot of Crowdsource the Truth viewers are starting to understand why I've created this sponsor exclusive series on Subscribestar and Patreon. It's not just because I need money to buy food and to have this be my full-time job. It's that there are these social engineers who we now see seem to be aligned with the same social engineers that are pushing some fabricated stories about coronavirus and various doctors that are acting very strangely. The very same social engineers that have been attacking me and trying to shut down Crowdsource the Truth for the past 3 years are defending some of the key players in this coronavirus story. And what people started to do when this morning I was being Twitter attacked by several social engineers, and it resulted in several new Patreon subscribers. And so what I've been telling people for a while is that because these social engineers want to take Crowdsource the Truth off the internet, one of the best ways that people can help defend against that is by becoming sponsors on Subscribestar and Patreon. So anytime somebody sees an obvious social engineer attack with fake nonsense, just become a sponsor for $2 a month, as little as $2 a month, and you're helping to fight the social engineering campaigns against Crowdsource the Truth, and it's very helpful. Now, we've called today's episode Mr. Epstein's Neighborhood.
Right.
And I prepared a little video so that everybody can understand, who are the people in your neighborhood. I actually meant to have that song, but I forgot. We've got, of course, Mr. Epstein himself. And I was always very disturbed by this weird puppet that Mr. Rogers had, was a king. So I've got the puppet king, Bill Gates, there with his royal court, Prince Andrew.
Just be careful as you're walking.
We got a pond there. And, some of Mr. Epstein's neighbors, Bill Cosby, we've got the Lolita Express is the trolley, and Mini Mike is there from his Magic Mike days. I've included also what's the guy's name? Mark Thompson, who's the CEO of the New York Times?
And who had formerly been at the BBC and
exactly,
and had allegedly covered up or not prosecuted, is it Johnny Savile or Jimmy Savile?
Jimmy Savile, exactly. So he's tied into this network, and he's now the CEO of the New York Times. I can't believe I didn't know that. We've got Rupert Murdoch there. We've got In-N-Out Burger, which we're going to be talking about a bit more. And also, of course, the phallus in chief, former President William Clinton.
William Bent Clinton.
William Bent Clinton.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, Charles, saw this story in the New York Post about someone allegedly planning a bombing. Yeah, let's get on the other side of this river. So where that's coming from. But
a river runs through it, Jason.
A river runs through Central Park. We didn't even know. A lot of people saw the story, Charles, about this alleged bombing of the statue of Alice in Wonderland. Did you know that George Webb's brother is now trying to blame me for planning that bombing?
Yeah.
It seems to be his only trick in the book. They're constantly trying to blame me for bombings that I didn't know about and had nothing to do with.
Amazing.
So I included those news guys, Rupert Murdoch and Mark Thompson, because I think that the news is a critical part of what's going on. And when you look at how tight these groups are, Rupert Murdoch was very close with Robert Maxwell, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, the associate of Jeffrey Epstein.
They owned the Post together, I think.
Well, he owned the Post, and Maxwell owned the Daily News.
Oh, and they did some deal, I think.
And they presented themselves as rivals in the media. There was even a pretty recent news story about them being rivals. I don't have it loaded right now, but I was showing it the other day. My point being, I think that was a false rivalry, and I'm seeing similarities in the social engineers who run the mainstream media. They're acting in exactly the same way as the social engineers that are trying to disrupt what we're doing in social media.
Right.
And that makes sense, Charles, because a lot of people know from the, what was the Church Committee hearings? They know from the Church Committee hearings that the CIA had their Operation Mockingbird to control the flow of information and what people were allowed to see in the mainstream news. I've been saying for a long time that we're experiencing Operation Mocking Tube, where they've got a crew of people who are trying to make sure that you and I and the other people that I have on Crowdsource the Truth aren't able to counteract their narrative as effectively as we have been in social media. And that's what these social engineers are doing. And that's why I'm constantly asking people to sponsor the show, help me fight against what they're doing.
That's
good.
good.
It's basically that.
Well, one of the when history is actually written, fairly written with the facts, one of the elements that will be seen to have contributed to the downfall of Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Mike Bloomberg and others who were keen to allow China to tap into the theoretical potential of the Chinese and Indian market, while at the same time destroying the middle class around the world, the working class around the world, especially in our country. One of the main factors in their demise will be that they stupidly organized foundations.
Right.
Because unlike a typical mystery, where you don't have the right to get private company access to private company data, with a public charity, the specific type that the Clinton Foundation is supposed to be, you have to make public disclosures. And if you make false ones, you're screwed. If you eliminate material information from you, you're screwed. And you can't just say, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to do it. There's a record out there. There's a record hiding in plain sight. And Bill Gates has made enormous errors, which I think is why he's so terrified now. His lawyers have explained to him, look, you have 20 years of filings, or however many he has at this point, where you've claimed that you gave money to things that are not actually public charities. You know, they're in the Clinton Foundation cases, they're fictitious, fake entities.
And you've done it already, didn't he?
I guess he just thought he'd never get caught.
What do you think about that, Charles? Central Park Medical Unit. I've never seen an ambulance like that before.
It says volunteer ambulance.
Huh. Well,
now we're getting very close to the Dalton School.
That's exactly right.
Where we're going to begin. We could have gone downtown, uptown, from the downtown up, but we chose to go downtown, uptown, down. And for those who don't know it, Jason, this is the reservoir up here.
Right.
Central Park Reservoir, and it's a very beautiful running track through here.
Yeah.
So
I was
surprised
there
there's so many people out.
Well, I think there's more people out now than there were last week, and I think it's probably a function of
weather.
The weather is beautiful. People are getting increasingly sick of staying locked in their homes.
Right.
And there have been rumblings of things kind of coming back to somewhat normal is maybe not the right word to use, but I want to stay on what you were saying about Bill Gates and all these guys. I think today's show, Charles, there's a Lotus. Today's show is going to be about drawing connections between these people.
Sure.
And it's not even so much drawing as it is just looking at them.
Right.
Because you mentioned Mike Bloomberg. He owns a giant media outlet. We were talking about Rupert Murdoch. He owns a giant media outlet. I saw a story the other day that was asking the question, why is the Murdoch media going so hard against Epstein? That was a fake story. They're not going hard against Epstein. All the stories seem to be helping Epstein. People might have noticed in the image I created for today.
Good.
Yeah. People might have noticed in the image that I created for today, I've included an In-N-Out Burger. I want people to remember that In-N-Out Burger logo. There's a lot of people, Charles, who have been watching this movie, Pizzagate 2020.
Right.
It's created by a YouTuber called Mouthy Buddha, who, in my opinion, is a very skilled filmmaker, obviously a very good researcher, and he's put together a movie that's not a rehash of information that we all saw in 2016 that nobody went to jail for. He introduces new information about something called there's a pickle company, I forget the name of it, but people should watch that movie, Pizzagate 2020. I put a link on one of the other videos I did. I'll put another link.
Sure.
And he also uncovers some hidden links related to In-N-Out Burger. Now, it doesn't implicate the restaurant, but it is certainly curious, and it ties together with other evidence that I've raised previously, like when I called In-N-Out Burger and asked them if they would provide closed-circuit surveillance footage to the FBI, they became much more interested in trying to threaten me with lawsuits. It was just a hit on the audio when I said that.
Really?
Tried to threaten me with lawsuits and criminal prosecution rather than trying to help the FBI find someone who's been accused of pornography, child pornography, pimping, and
massive
pedophilia. Child. So that just happened.
What?
We're going to try to fix it. The sound problem. So it's interesting, Charles. Let's see if we can get the sound back to the way we need it. All right, hang on. I know how we got to fix it.
All right. You want me to hold some?
Just hang on. We'll fix it in a second. Very interesting. It's not cooperating. I think people see what happened there. Should switch over. It worked last week. Hang on. It's very interesting. Very interesting. I think we've got it. Hang on, give it a second. Needs a minute to kind of get itself together here.
So if I could just interrupt your train of thought for a second, Jason?
Yes.
So this is St. David's School, which is a very, it's an upscale, it used to be a Catholic, mostly Catholic private school, but it's super high end. And it's an example, these kind of schools today, I'm not sure how much they cost precisely, but they used to cost about $65,000 a year. 65,000 after-tax dollars per year. And this neighborhood that we're going through is filled with schools like this, and filled with, people who love to send their kids to these fancy schools. St. David's, I think, only goes up, it used to only go up to 8th grade. I don't know now whether it goes higher than that. But in the schools that we're next going to go see, Dalton is a school that goes up to 12th grade. And we all know from personal experience that your adolescent years are years where your mind is raging, your hormones are raging. Some people cope with it well, others don't cope with it well. And oftentimes there are many lost children who, maybe their rich parents aren't paying them enough attention or whatever, and they become prime targets for predators, especially if they're, good-looking girls or good-looking young men, athletic. Oftentimes girls, especially in those teenage years, a 14-year-old or 15-year-old girl may look like a 21-year-old girl.
Right.
And so the fact that Epstein somehow managed to worm his way into this environment, you see it's a high-end district. This is perhaps, today it's actually not the most expensive part of New York because of all the development and
but downtown. It's famously expensive.
It's incredibly expensive. Yeah, and it's also, you don't notice many grocery stores. I mean, you can't really live up here with a family unless you have help.
Because the rent is so high.
Well, rent. I'm saying you can't.
Or the ownership of the real estate.
You have to get into the building, and then you've got to get your kids into the schools, and then you got to navigate getting the kids to and from school. And oftentimes you have to employ nannies, and then you got to figure out how to get food into the apartment. There aren't that many grocery stores. I mean, it's not a place for people
family friendly
who are living on $65,000 a year. I mean, you can't do it here.
There's something else about Dalton. I've known a few people through my life who went to Dalton, going to NYU and summer camp where I would interface with other people from New York, but not from my school. I went to public school. A lot of the people that I know who went to Dalton were doing drugs and doing cocaine when we were young teenagers and stuff that was like so foreign to me. Right. So that's kind of the environment over there. And if you're the young hip teacher who's like, hey, you want to have a party at my house or something, you can kind of see how this sort of thing could happen.
But which is odd because where was Epstein living? I mean, I don't think he was living in Manhattan when he supposedly was teaching at Dalton.
Oh, there's another thing I wanted to tell everybody about Dalton. Everybody knows that Jeffrey Epstein's father was the dean or something at Dalton. Not Jeffrey Epstein's father, Donald Barr's father.
Headmaster, he was the headmaster.
Headmaster. Right before Epstein started working there was this whole question of did he hire him, did he not hire him? I purchased from eBay this comic book called Argosy. And the thing that was so strange about it is that the head, the lead novelette story or whatever is written by Donald Barr Chidsey. And it's about the island of Runaway.
Huh.
Yeah. So I don't claim that this is evidence of anything other than a comic book from 1940, but it does seem to be strange in that Donald Barr Chidsey is a very close, kind of similar name to Donald Barr. And 1940 would have been potentially a time that Donald Barr, who later became a novelist, might have been writing pulp fiction novels.
What, a 109?
Yeah. I just showed that to everyone so that people in the audience who are interested in that can maybe do some further research and find out if they know anything about this person, Donald Barr Chidsey. Does he have anything to do with Donald Barr, the father of our current Attorney General, who has failed to prosecute the Clintons, failed to prosecute Andrew McCabe? It's just curious.
Yeah, it is curious. So if we just move on a little bit here. So, if people have to understand that I definitely cannot be objective about this. That this high school league that I was a part of, the school I went to, Horace Mann, we did not look up to Dalton.
No.
We regarded Dalton as a place of actually not as good athletics, certainly not as good academically.
That's known.
And but filled with lots of all these schools today are people, very rich kids.
Right.
Or children of very rich parents.
Right.
So here's the Dalton School.
Oh, I don't know that I've ever been here before.
Yeah, they fixed it up. Now, to put this in perspective, this is, if you step back, it looks like a pretty large building.
Oh yeah. Whoa.
But and this goes, I think, certainly from first grade all the way up to 12th.
Wow.
But in Horace Mann's case, it's further up in the. Thank you. It's further up in the very northernmost portion of Manhattan on a gigantic campus. We had
more like a college, really, right?
Right, and when I went, it only went from 7th to 12th grade. We had a baseball field, football field in the center. Right up in the main building, we had an auditorium. We had 9 tennis courts, and we're close to a golf course. So it's a very large campus. So we actually up at Horace Mann, we felt sorry for the people who were cooped up in an apartment building here.
Are there apartments here, or this whole thing is the school?
I think it's all Dalton.
Wow. And you can see it's a pretty old building. They've got the window unit air conditioners.
Right.
It's very difficult to retrofit a building like this with HVAC, right?
Right. And you look at this and you say, even back then when Epstein supposedly was teaching at Dalton, parents didn't save money to spend the equivalent today of $60,000 per kid per year so that they could be taught by a college dropout.
Or a rapist.
Or a rapist predator. I mean, that's not why you
generally not a selling point.
And I say that, I'll freely admit that there has been a scandal that has been discussed extensively in the mainstream press about Horace Mann when I was there, involving sexual predators.
Wow.
And it's horrible stuff. But that seems to be a crime that may even continue now at these schools. You've got impressionable young kids, and they're finding their way sexually, and they're confused, and it's not good stuff. But anyway, this is where Epstein began his theoretical career, right? In the 70s, several years. I suppose I was at Horace Mann when he was teaching at Dalton.
Right.
In theory. Now, you don't go. I mean, it's just preposterous that he would have gotten a real teaching job at this school. But you don't go from that job to Wall Street on the strength of no college background and you're maybe a teacher here. There probably, I don't know how many people have been able to do that. We can go back to Park.
Sure.
Now we're going to go to another hospital.
Right. See, it's very strange. People see me broadcasting all the time, Charles, and this sound problem never happens. But it seems that when we're in Mr. Epstein's neighborhood and talking about him, it happens. So this is a new phone. It's a software update, but now I think I know how to fix it. So let's just have 1 second here.
Sure.
Plug this in here. And the other thing that people might not have realized is that last week, just prior to our show, when I was getting everything ready, the phone that I always use failed, and it's now broken. So this is a new phone, and whenever a problem persists across multiple devices, that's pretty interesting. Not the way it works. Let's see. Okay. I think it's back. Yeah.
All right.
So that's really interesting that's happening.
Yeah. So when we think, people would say what they want about Wall Street, but certainly, and in the 70s, Wall Street was not doing very well. 70s were hell for many reasons. But to get
oil
a job,
embargo?
Well, we were in stagflation. We had Jimmy Carter
off the gold standard,
standard, all kinds of problems.
It was a major economic transition. Perhaps we're up for that now.
Yeah. Well, and so the notion that some tutor, maybe he was a part-time tutor at Dalton, would leap out of Dalton into Wall Street to get a serious job in the 70s, and then at a time back then, people on Wall Street didn't make the kind of money in the 70s that, the disproportionate money that you now make or used to make down there. So how this ne'er-do-well college dropout tutor landed on Wall Street and then, in theory, made enough money to go out on his own and set up a business where he would only, in the late 70s, early 80s, only deal with a client who would give him $1 billion. That's like today saying, I'm a college dropout, I'm a surfer. I'm not saying he was a surfer. I taught part-time. I went on Wall Street. I have no capital, no family money. But today, I'm going to set up a new business where I'm only going to take people who have 100 billion or more to give me. Not.
None of those people would give it to him. He has no track record, no credentials.
So his life story, his known life story, is completely implausible. And on that, just from those points alone, on that subject, we now can tell people, I suppose, that Wednesday we're going to have the pleasure of an author who has written a book about Epstein and has also written a book about Nygaard. And we're going to be interviewing that lady. She's working on a sequel book on Epstein, bringing it up to the present. So that will be a fantastic show Wednesday at 4 p.m., I guess.
Closing in. We'll be back.
So we're just laying, this is like the appetizer. We're laying the banquet table with context for the show Wednesday, so you can then see what this author has to say about what she's unearthed. And she's done a lot of work.
But I think it's also an important aspect of this show to draw together the connections between people and things that may not seem connected.
Right.
Like I made a big deal out of this news story in the New York Times that featured Dr. Colleen Smith talking about the ventilators.
That's welcome to New York.
What's going on over there?
He's walked out in front of traffic.
Well, there was this article in the New York Times. It was actually not an article, Charles. The thing that's so interesting about it in the context of now realizing, and I don't know how I didn't know that the CEO of the New York Times was the Director General of the BBC for so long, but the BBC has got a big statue out in front of it of Prospero and Ariel, which basically is depicting man-boy rape right in front of the BBC. And there was a public outcry to remove it, not only because it's distasteful in and of itself, but the artist who created it is this guy, Eric Gill, who raped his own daughters.
Nice.
And was a super disgusting guy. And the BBC refused to remove it. The BBC is well known for having that guy, Jimmy Savile, be one of their most famous stars, who is called by many as perhaps the most prolific pedophile in history. He was friends with the royal family, which is a connect, obviously, to Andrew. And the BBC has done nothing about it. In fact, two BBC reporters, Jill Dando and another woman whose name, unfortunately, I don't know, who were doing reports on the BBC about Jimmy Savile, mysteriously died. So now, Charles, it's amazing. It's amazing, Charles, how this problem comes about right when we're talking about critical things. Yeah, hold that for just a second.
Sure.
And I'll get this back.
Another production critic.
I'll get this back in line here. See, Charles, for a problem to never happen and then to happen really frequently when I'm talking about BBC and people from BBC who have died, it's people can draw their own conclusions about what, if anything, that indicates.
Yeah.
But hopefully this will come back here. Is this working?
So,
okay, hang on back.
this is a beautiful spot in New York.
Any sound yet. Okay, now it's back.
All right.
Okay.
We're between 85th and 86th Street, walking down Park Avenue, and this is some kind of famous building here. We'll see in a second.
Which one?
This one here.
Is it?
Yeah.
Charles, we're getting audio hits all the time when we're talking about the connections between these extremely powerful people. And Charles, who among the people we've been speaking about the past couple days and weeks would you imagine might have access to extremely sophisticated cyber counterintelligence tools and capabilities to hack things and monitor things and tunnel into VPNs and access cell phones? Who might have that?
Chinese?
They might, but maybe, maybe a software executive who
what does he know
has revealed. I'm not saying he does. He could, though.
Yeah.
But so there's the BBC now tied directly to the New York Times. I contend that that story about Dr. Colleen Smith was loaded with fake news. When I started to ask her if she's ever interfaced with fellow University of Chicago alum Bernadine Dorn, or the person who has recently been being discussed as the possible running mate for nearly brain-dead Joe Biden, I'm talking about Michelle Obama, who was the Associate Dean of Students during the time that Dr. Colleen Smith was there. I think that we all know that Bernadine Dorn mentored Michelle Obama at the Sidley Austin law firm, which reminds me of another thing that I wanted to share with everybody. I went to an office that a building that contains the Sidley Austin. Oh, look at that. There's something else wrong that we're going to have to fix. But look at the symbol outside of Sidley Austin. It looks remarkably similar to the In-N-Out burger logo. So we've had another issue that we're going to have to address here, Charles.
All right.
Oh. Warning. Disconnecting a camera will interrupt the audio and video recording on that device. Okay. So the camera went dead. Let's see if we can get it back here. But I think that people should take a look at, yeah, see, they're hitting us, Charles. This is the same problem that we had down there at the World Trade Center, where this camera has now disconnected. So we're going to try to address this real quick before we get to our next stop, because there's stuff that we want people to see. Yeah, this is out. That one's out. So, okay, here, hold this again for me for a second, please. People can bear with us for just a moment while I address this. See, I thought this might occur, so I created a system for us that's got some redundancy. Again, I don't want to talk in detail about what that is, because if this is deliberate disruption, we don't want the disruptors to know too much about what it is that we're doing to avoid. So let me see if I can bring this back for us here. I hope I can. Stand by for just a second, everyone. This is really interesting that I walk around all the time without a problem, and then when we start talking about these guys, we get a problem. But resiliency, Charles, that's the key.
There you go.
Okay, so we're about to get back in action here. Here's how we're gonna do it. Oh, whoa.
Am I touching it?
That's okay. No, that wasn't you, that was me.
Let go?
No, keep holding on. We'll be back in just a second. Oh, this thing, such a pain.
Is it Chinese?
It is. It is. Okay, we're very close. Stand by, everyone. I don't know if this is deliberate, Charles. It's very difficult to say. What do you think?
It certainly is odd.
It's persistent is what it is.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think as these social engineers are learning, you gotta wake up pretty early in the morning if you want to mess with Jason Goodman, and you gotta stay up pretty late at night. I hope that if anyone does think that this is deliberate disruption, they'll become sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. But Charles, we're back in full action here.
Good. Well done. Good save. We're across the street from St. Ignatius Loyola Church, which is an old Catholic church here in New York. And again, this is a neighborhood. It's very pretty in the school year normally. At around 7:30, 7:45, it's kind of a tradition that fathers or sometimes mothers, sometimes nannies will walk their children up and down these streets, and they're just packed with, trying to get their kids to school on time. So precisely the wrong place to allow a sexual predator to dwell.
Right.
So whoever made the decision to encourage Jeffrey Epstein to be a tutor or whatever he was at Dalton, and patrol around this neighborhood, giving him free rein. Again, I don't think he made enough money at Dalton in those days to rent anything in New York, in Manhattan.
Right.
He's probably living with his parents or someone else.
Probably a lot of teachers at Dalton might live in Westchester or something and commute down.
Absolutely.
On Metro North.
I mean, these days, the teachers are paid a lot of money, and the administrators are paid a lot of money. And the head of the school at Horace Mann lives in a mansion.
Wow.
A big one up on the campus.
Wow.
But you get a sense of the buildings. I mean, these are...
Yeah, it's fancy stuff around here.
Yeah. What we're doing is we're heading now close to where my two kids were born, Lenox Hill Hospital, and where my middle brother was born. I of course, was born where?
Where?
Los Angeles.
Oh, yes, right.
It's obvious from my accent, right?
Yeah. What? Well, we don't need to go into that, but...
No, dude. And this, just for people...
Yeah.
This is... I used to live on the next street down, on 82nd Street. Excuse me, one block in from where we are now.
This is a part of town we haven't really been to on the walk.
There's a public school over there that's very nice, actually. And this is the block I used to live on. We don't have the light, Jason.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see all these connections, Charles, because a lot of people think the Wall Street Journal and Fox News and the New York Post are all reporting independently, but of course they're all controlled ultimately by Rupert Murdoch And we heard on Mike Moore's Thomas Paine podcast earlier this week that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., despite being close personal friends with Roger Ailes, he was denied the opportunity to appear on Fox News. Something that a lot of people always ask me about you. How come Charles isn't on Hannity? How come Charles isn't on Fox? I think we know the reason. They don't want information that is actually going to get millions of people to know what the Clintons are up to, what Bill Gates is up to.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think during the 2006, and I know you're fair as well, but in 2016, Fox put me on an enormous amount of crucial moments, actually, in the whole election cycle, including as we got to the vote itself on the 6 o'clock news, you know, which is not so easy to do. It's much tougher, I think, than Hannity. And the other part of the reason why I don't think they have me on as frequently is I met with them, you know, and they just said, look, this is a really super complex topic, and we have great difficulty figuring out how to lay this out in our typical format. You know, they were not going to do a 1 hour show and say no commercials, no nothing. I mean, and so to be fair, there's an element of that. I also think that in 2020, you now have the James Murdoch and Lachlan Murdoch and their respective wives.
Yes.
Much more in the driver's seat, and they're more left-leaning or inclined to like the leftist view because they're so rich. It's a joke, actually.
Right.
So it's not surprising to me. And in the end, you know, when this finally does come crashing forward, as I believe it is now, you know, I don't have to go on Fox News if I don't want to.
Of course.
And I will remember who supported me and who didn't.
Well,
so,
right. And I didn't mean to, you know, throw any wrinkles into any kind of political
it's okay.
Thing that might be going on with Fox News. I'm just saying it's very clear that again. Here, we'll get it sorted out very quickly.
Wow.
I mean, again, I don't understand how it never happens, Charles, and then as soon as we start talking about this stuff, there it is. But I know how to get it fixed each time, and I mean, I've used this equipment all over the world, Charles.
That's amazing.
Okay, so this.
I hope people are enjoying the views, the flowers are actually blue, the cherry trees are blossoming.
Sorry, they can't hear you. It should be coming back right now. Okay, I think sound.
Sounds back?
Blinking out now. Yeah, it's back.
You got it.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to disable that. So now, okay, we won't discuss that, but
all right.
Anybody who...
So there you have a Lenox Hill Hospital ambulance.
Where's that?
And a bunch of idiots on dirt bikes with the wrong kind of tires to go on asphalt. I used to have, believe it or not, a dirt bike, and I used to go around on my property, various properties on my dirt bike with my kids. And it is so dangerous to take a dirt bike with those tires on asphalt because it does not grip.
I've noticed that people are doing it like it's a fun thing for some dirt bike person to do. I've seen a few of those around the city.
Well, the acceleration, I love them. In grass, you know, on a field and stuff like that, the acceleration in even not a highly powered dirt bike is really something. Yeah. You get on those things and you just fly.
You know what would be cool, Charles, is every time that weird sound problem happens, if one person became a sponsor on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, what it does is it shows whoever might be doing that, if they are, that all they're doing is making Crowdsource the Truth stronger when they try to disrupt.
Yeah.
So that's the way that people can help. And it makes a big difference. They're going to get access to a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content, and they make sure that these free shows keep coming as well.
Yeah.
So
we're getting real close.
Yeah, we're on 78.
It's on the left-hand side.
Okay, so we're coming up to Lenox Hill. A lot of people have noticed, Charles, that there hasn't been as much crowding at the hospitals. I went to a funeral home last week. This guy, Lincoln Kareem, who I'm trying to reach out to. If anybody knows Lincoln Kareem, if he's interested in appearing on the show or sharing any of his video, or, you know, I just want to help bring some attention to his channel. I think he's doing a great job. He's presenting really long form videos of him riding all over the city, and he usually speeds it up So you get a good idea, like, you know, it's kind of a compressed version of how empty everything is, and then he stops when he gets to these key locations, and he's obviously a very skilled and experienced photographer and filmmaker. He's got real long telephoto lenses, and he revealed this thing, Operation Gotham 2020,
right,
which still remains somewhat of a mystery. There was a military person who told me the other day that it's the operation there at the Javits Center, which we've been told is a hospital. And I do believe there is a hospital facility in there, but in part what I realized from watching Lincoln Kareem's footage, he showed so many people walking into the place,
right,
and none of them look like doctors to me. They're all wearing the same military uniform, and I would think a doctor might have a red plus on them or something.
So there's
now, that's a logo I recognize from a medical company.
Lindy, yeah.
What is it? It's like liquid nitrogen.
It's a famous compressed gas group, I think, German or Swiss.
So this has got to be liquid nitrogen.
Liquid oxygen. No
liquid
smoking.
Oxygen. Right.
And there you have the main entrance to the hospital, and you see a few ambulances.
Oh yeah, let's look at that. Well, see, this is the first indicator of something unusual at a hospital that I've seen. The liquid oxygen presumably would be supplying patients with extra oxygen, something that we've heard that they need. Here's a guy smoking. That doesn't
Brilliant.
Not too close, but
with a surgical mask.
Yeah. How you doing? You work in the hospital? Has it been real crazy in the hospital? Has it been very crazy in the hospital?
No, now it's quiet.
Quiet now?
It's quiet.
Why do they have all the liquid oxygen over there?
That was putting away the first time putting, you know.
They put it there in the beginning because they were anticipating, and there wasn't the need for all this liquid oxygen, or what do you think?
I don't know, but what kind of people, you know, look that up, but everything is quiet now.
It's quiet now.
It's quiet.
What do you do in the hospital?
I'm housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
Yeah.
And so there haven't been as many people. Are you surprised to hear on the news that there's thousands of people dying?
Yeah, it's slow now, everybody going out.
Everybody's going out.
Yeah.
All right.
Yesterday they were 54, the other day 34, or something like that, you know.
Okay. All right, take care. Thanks.
Stay safe. You want to
Where was
turn
that
around?
music coming from?
Out of the car.
Well, let's go somewhere away from the music.
Well, let's go back and we'll continue
Sure.
down this way. But so you can see, this has actually been, the facade has been greatly improved since 30 years ago. And it's quite a complex.
Yeah. See, so that's interesting. So somebody who just comes and looks at this would think, oh no, liquid oxygen on the street. If that guy is correct, it seems it was put there as a precaution and maybe not really utilized.
Right. Which is, in some ways, I mean, you'd like to say it's a happy outcome.
Yes.
Until you consider the hysteria, the mania that's been whipped up by Dr. Scarf and Dr. Fauci.
Dr. Patent.
Yeah, Dr. Patent.
Mind your own business. Yeah. See, this is starting to happen, Charles. We've got these people who are so brainwashed by the news that they're telling me to do things that there's no law that says I need to wear a mask.
Exactly.
There's a guideline.
Right. And last I checked, that didn't look like a sheriff to me.
Didn't look like the sheriff. And if I want to start evaluating what he's doing, that's maybe not something he should be doing. We can get into that, but he should mind his business and I'll mind mine.
And maybe he should eat a little bit less.
Exactly.
So now where we're headed at this point is we're going to go, I think, over to the...
well, let's not telegraph where we're going. We'll just go.
Okay.
I don't like to tell people where we're going because there are these applications. We might remember that George Webb's friend, the photographer, Peter Duke, admitted in a phone call to having a facial recognition app on his phone.
Right.
And then he attempted to strike that YouTube video so that people can't see it and hear him admit to that. It's interesting. I mean, he claims to have not known that I was recording the phone call, but you know, I think people who have gotten on the phone with me and lied to me know that it's something I've become somewhat known for. And then, see, what happens, Charles, is it becomes interesting when certain people don't want to take calls from me, because they begin to suspect.
Jason.
Oh yeah, wait, we got to look at this, Charles.
That's the back of the hospital.
And these are something that people had asked me specifically to photograph that they wanted to see, the freezer trucks. Now this is a freezer truck. It definitely has the compressor on. Someone commented when we were over by the medical examiner's office last week that the compressor on the freezer trucks was not on. So these are certainly on. Now this guy looks like he might know something about it.
Yeah, well, okay.
You can stay here if you want. Do you work in the hospital? You work in the hospital? Are you loading these trucks with dead people? Are there 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 dead people? Hey, just the second that I asked that guy if there were dead people in the house, it's the audio cut out. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Amazing.
I mean, at what point does it become not a coincidence, Charles?
I think that happened about 20 minutes ago.
Just get us back to where we need to be. See if this cooperates. Okay, I think we're good. So it's interesting, Charles. That's another opportunity, hopefully, for people to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on Patreon or Subscribestar. That guy said he doesn't know if there are dead people in the trucks.
I think they're mostly on orders not to talk.
Right.
And
that always makes me confident that they're trustworthy. Now, a lot of people have been saying, oh, these people aren't going to talk to you. You got to go to the public information officer. I've been doing that.
Right, and they don't talk to you either.
Correct.
Meaningfully.
Correct.
Yeah.
I contacted the public information officer for the Manhattan District Attorney, who had issued some documents to the New York Post with regard to that alleged statue bombing. And it's interesting, Charles, the one piece of evidence that is dubious is having to do with statements about bombing the statue. They quote texts from Kevin Fallon making direct threats to his father, to his girlfriend, but it was individual one, I think, or informant one, who spoke about statements that in summary indicated, or words like that he was going to bomb the statue. So I don't know what that means, but it sounded to me very much like some lawyer language for stuff that could be dropped from the complaint without too much difficulty, and just say, oh, that was a grammatical error or a mistake or a misunderstanding or something.
Yeah. So just to fill people in where we are, as we head down this way, you get further and further away from the private schools.
Right.
So this area, though, is, and the building we're about to come to is, highly prized real estate in here. Very, very expensive real estate. There are some gigantic apartments. I mean, 20-room apartments, triplexes. Wow. In these buildings, and people estimate the value of art, good art.
Okay. That's really ridiculous. They're just going to now try to make it happen so frequently that we can't walk down the street. I mean, I might presume it was a software error if I didn't use this stuff all the time.
Always a smart move.
Is it back?
Jaywalking with a baby in a carriage.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should be back now. All right. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So there we go.
All right. So we're getting 72nd Street is a very important east-west street.
Right.
And there are quite a few super fancy apartment buildings in here. And we're now, whole
Charles, look.
Kombucha
car, your favorite.
for you. Just probably delivering you some kombucha.
Yeah.
But we are now getting very close to the final, in theory, the final New York City residence of one Jeffrey Epstein. And we're going to show you what his brownstone looks like.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
I always found that show to be creepy as hell.
Well, the king puppet for me was just too much, which is why I made Bill Gates the creepy king puppet. Not to suggest that Bill Gates is a puppet, although he may be. We don't know. Seems like he's the kingpin of certain things, but he's definitely creepy, and I thought that that puppet was an appropriate character for him to be. So we're on 73rd here.
This is the building I was referring to. That is, I know of one person who has, one or two people who live in this building, and it's under facade renovation right now, so it's covered, the scaffolding. You might want to go across the street.
Sure.
Just, I don't know if it interferes with you.
No.
But you can see it from afar.
I mean, you can also see how few cars are out, even though it seems like things are reinvigorated to some extent. I say there's more people out this week than last.
A lot more
what
people.
Do you think? Yeah.
A lot more. And I think as the weather gets warmer, it'll become increasingly more difficult to keep people indoors.
Right.
Plus, in theory, as the weather heats up, the virus has a tougher time surviving. You know, here you go. Stay inside, stay home.
Oh, someone's got some giraffes here warning us to stay home and stay inside.
With a mask.
Right. Some slob will come by and yell at the horse for not wearing one.
It's a donkey, is it?
Oh, well, right. They should have had an elephant.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
But they, you can be partisan.
So this, you can see the townhouses around here are, you know, not big compared to a suburban home.
Let's talk about the mask thing for a second, Charles, because we did see, just on the way up here, a photo. Let's see, did I add that photo? Let me see if I can bring that in here real quick. We saw a photo, yeah, here it is, that was saying that you're not allowed into the store without the mask. So, I mean, again, it's whether or not Bill Gates succeeds in installing a chip into everybody, which I already saw some news show having one of their correspondents getting the chip inserted by a tattoo artist or a piercing
that's a brilliant move.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if they don't succeed in doing that, basically private businesses and jerks like that guy who thinks he needs to tell me what to do could basically ostracize anyone who's not under the mind control of the mainstream media's narrative on the coronavirus. As brought to you by the BBC, the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Fox News, just right there. Let's say those are the only ones that were on board.
You've left out CNN, MSNBC.
Exactly.
ABC.
Exactly. So how small is the group of people that you would need to build a consensus in the mainstream news?
Very small.
It's very small. I want people to consider that when they're watching videos from people like Paul Cottrell, George Webb. These guys are a crew that are trying to convince you of something. And the thing that they do, at least the subversive, limited hangout people in social media, they'll tell you something. So many people tell me, well, I know that guy's a liar, but some of what he says is interesting. That's how they draw people in. And then you say, well, maybe he's not lying, maybe it's a mistake, but this is the essence of a limited hangout. And if people don't know what a limited hangout is, they can look that up.
A further nuance is that the number of people who are represented by the Williams and Connolly, they call him the book lawyer, Robert Barnett, across the political spectrum, the number of anchors, journalists. Yeah, this way. We're going over.
So they're able to influence those people by giving them book deals and stuff.
Above market book deals.
And the other thing that we were talking about, maybe this was before we went live, you know, this guy who's Bill Clinton's friend we have to talk about, right?
Which guy now? Oh, it's the other branch.
Right. So like even just an option, you could forget about a book. You could option somebody's life story, pay them a bunch of money to prevent them from selling that story to anybody else, and then they never have to actually even do anything.
Exactly.
Okay, so now which one is it?
Which building?
Yeah.
It's the next block.
Uh-huh.
So this is, I thought it was, wasn't it? The address I remember was 9 East.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So
I guess it's going to be on this side, right by the park.
Right by Alice in Wonderland.
Is it?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, What were you going to say?
I was going to say, these townhouses are incredibly expensive.
Yeah. And if Charles says that, you know what he's talking about.
Well, they cut a deal so that single-family homeowners in Manhattan don't pay the same percentage of value tax that suburban homeowners do. So it's not actually, it's probably the same value up in where I used to live in Millbrook would have a prohibitively higher school and county tax as compared to a townhouse down here. Like a townhouse, these townhouses which might go today for 20 million, or who knows what they'll go for in this market, 40 million, they might have annual tax bills of 100,000. Whereas you have $40 million of property in Millbrook, you'll be paying 800,000 in taxes.
Wow. Wow. I thought New York City was super high for real estate tax.
Not Manhattan. They've cut this deal.
Huh.
Not New York City, I should say. All right, this is 19. Yeah, here's a very modest, understated townhouse coming up. This is not it.
No. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Yep, that's 11.
Yep.
And here's 9.
Now, who else was living right around here? Oh, there's a video camera looking at us.
Yeah, this is 9.
Bars on the windows. Who lives here now, Charles?
I don't know. I thought this used to be a school.
It definitely looks very large.
It's massive. Be careful.
Yep.
Oversized doors, bars on the window. And this used to be Les Wexner's home.
Does he still own it?
No, supposedly he just gave it.
Well, but now that Epstein's dead, is it left to his brother?
Unclear.
Or is it left to that guy Boris, what's his name, Nikolic?
I forget. But you look at this thing. This is prime real estate, right across the street from the Frick Mansion, right near Alice in Wonderland's, right over there to your left.
Mm-hmm.
And Epstein's, in the books that I've read so far, his approach to scamming these models and scamming these masseuses would be to approach them or have people approach them and say, listen, how would you like to be a Victoria's Secret model?
Fat.
How would you like to be? He'd get women to approach these 17, 15-year-old girls and say, listen, you look upset. Can I help you? I really think you'd be a great model. I have connections with Victoria's Secret. And they would
go right in.
Right in. And I think the extent so far that we know about Epstein is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg.
No pun intended.
No, pun intended.
Well, let's see how close the statue of Alice in Wonderland is.
Sure. I think it's...
I don't know that there's really much more that we can see. I mean, who lives in that 11? We've heard that Howard Lutnick is his neighbor. Does Howard Lutnick own 11?
And Bill Cosby supposedly lived on the street. I'm not sure.
See, the thing that's interesting about Howard Lutnick, and this came up in, of course, it's right across the street from the Frick, one of my very favorite museums.
Right.
The thing that's so interesting about Howard Lutnick is that on September 11th, he was the only person from Cantor Fitzgerald, he's the CEO, who survived. Everybody else died in the building, including his own brother.
I think he was
taking his kid to school.
Right, and he was actually, a friend of mine was with him.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they both had kids at the same school.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because David Hawkins draws the contrast between Howard Lutnick and this woman, Rosemary Smith, who was the telephone switchboard operator for Sidley Austin.
Really?
Which has that sculpture in front of a building that's one of 3 triplets that is identical to the building that Rupert Murdoch's News Corp is in. And that Sidley Austin office is in the building that has the sculpture that looks remarkably similar to the logo from In-N-Out Burger.
Interesting.
I don't know if any of these things mean anything, but it's interesting. Yeah, we can show people how we do it in New York.
This is that playground that we saw before, and Alice in Wonderland, I think, is down here. This is the one I walked by it and I said, this is just a nothing burger.
Well, it's interesting because there's going to be a lot of kids, and I don't know that Jeffrey Epstein was necessarily approaching the age of kids that would be playing on these things, but they frequently have maybe young, I don't know, nannies or who knows what's going on over here, but it's it's just an interesting, maybe there's nothing to that, but it's
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do is now we're walking uptown, back to 72nd Street.
We'll just poke in here and see what's going on with that statue.
Right.
Again, I haven't seen the evidence. The journalist from the New York Post hasn't seen the evidence. I've now spoken to multiple people in the NYPD who say that specific evidence related to the threat against the statue hasn't been seen except for the way it's written in that complaint.
Uh-huh.
And there's certain things about the language surrounding in that specific statement that I think make it sort of squishy.
I agree. I agree.
So the question that I have is, did someone at the New York Post decide that that would be an interesting element to add, given that the kid was captured Saturday? Here's another thing, Charles. It doesn't say he was arrested at a hotel in Midtown, which, by the way, nobody knows what hotel it was. That's not mentioned in the complaint.
Right.
None of the police, none of the journalists for the New York Post were aware. But the New York Post said he was tracked to a hotel in the theater district. And again, this taps right into language that David Hawkins has been using for 12 years. He talks about this Jerome Lemelson tracking patent for prisoner tracking and how the company Serco was involved in a huge scandal. They transport prisoners. We've seen Julian Assange in a Serco truck being transported to Belmarsh. They track prisoners and transport them with the GPS ankle bracelets. A lot of people are very concerned about this Bill Gates chip going into your hand could
That's
be
not
used
gonna
for
happen.
tracking. Well, you know, Cody Snodgrass, which we should mention, today is the 25th anniversary of the bombing of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, something that Cody Snodgrass writes about in his book, Choosing the Light, Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing. Cody's going to be with us tomorrow on Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard. That's going to be on Patreon and Subscribestar. We got an amazing guest coming on that show tomorrow, Charles.
Who's that?
Chip Tatum.
Who is Chip Tatum?
CIA pilot who was involved in Iran-Contra
Wow.
and has a lot of inside information. He wrote a book, or co-wrote a book. We'll learn a lot more about that tomorrow, but Chip's got a lot
Look
to
at
talk
that
about.
beautiful cherry tree.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day.
Beautiful day in the neighborhood, Jen.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. So I don't know, Charles, we've seen steganographic messages in newspapers before. We're talking all about these guys who run the newspapers. There's a bizarre series of coincidences that attack the sound, attack the broadcast, attack the Wi-Fi. Everything that I'm using, they've tried to take out. Luckily, I've been through it enough times to come up with ideas for how to counter the attacks. Now, where is the statue?
It's coming down here, I think.
Okay.
Unless did we pass it already?
Last time I thought it was on 72nd. You said it was on 76th.
I think we'll see it in a second. I think
Yeah.
we haven't gotten to the boat pond yet.
Right. But it's nice for people to have another chance to see Central Park here. It's definitely more people. People can even go back to our video from last week and compare it and see
Right.
how the density differs. I wonder who that guy's talking to.
He's wearing a Yale hat.
Oh. So should we talk about Bill Clinton's friend? Oh yes, this is what I wanted to talk about in relation to that. I forgot the guy's name. You were just telling me before.
Taylor
that
Branch.
Taylor Branch was sent to Haiti. Let's talk about that a minute. I'm interested in Partners in Health and what they were doing in Haiti.
Yeah, so the whole Partners in Health story doesn't add up to me. It was originally financed, set up in association with Cornell, the Ivy League institution. And we may have passed it already, Jason.
Yeah, it's 76, but that's all right. People saw it last week.
So it was originally set up under their auspices, and they created an organization in Haiti called, it's a French name, but the acronym is GHESKIO, GESKIO, or GESKIO, or something like that. And Paul Farmer was a sort of a standout student in theory at Duke and public high school, from a pretty odd family and background, who, upon graduating from Duke, found himself going down to Haiti on a track to go to Harvard Medical School, and he began ministering to the sick. He fell in bed with this idea of liberation theology, which is espoused by Bernard Aristide, and next thing you know, a rich patron in Massachusetts decides to be the money behind this entity called Partners in Health.
Should we take a different route than we did last week?
Sure. Now, the problem with all that is that Partners in Health and any U.S. Foundation has to be set up first in the U.S.
Right.
So the initial paperwork on Partners in Health, we can't seem to find anything for the period in the earliest period. The next thing you know, in like 2001 or 2, they set up a new Partners in Health.
That's how they do it, right?
Right. And Haiti is a place where, if you look on, the regulatory watchdog websites, basically say you shouldn't give any money to a charity that's based in Haiti. It's so corrupt.
That's interesting.
And life is cheap there. As we talked about in the past, there are no roads. There's not that much electricity. I mean, there isn't a good road system. There isn't a great set of hospitals. And the people are desperately poor. Indeed, they're so poor that they'll sell their children.
Wow.
And life is miserable there. And on top of which you get the hurricanes and the earthquakes and everything else that happens there. So, continue this way, Jason? Or
well, I think people are very interested, Charles, in these infamous Central Park tunnels, although I'm reluctant to go under one because I did that one time and the signal was lost. Yeah.
So Farmer gets involved supposedly treating HIV and AIDS patients, and a study that he publishes, not in the tough peer-reviewed portion of Lancet, but in a lesser scrutinized portion of Lancet.
The classified ads.
Virtually, becomes the basis for a breathless, maniacal rush, headlong rush to create the Global Fund in 2001 and 2, under the auspices of Jeffrey Sachs. So there's this paper, and then there's the consensus statement on AIDS, not HIV and AIDS, but on AIDS, adopted the 4th of April 2001. By January of 2002, the Global Fund exists where? Housed within the World Health Organization.
Right.
So there's Partners in Health, like the Clinton Foundation. It has very sketchy legal paperwork.
Right.
It did not, as far as I can tell, organize itself lawfully before it conducted substantial operations internationally. It wasn't truthful, in my opinion, in its later application for federal tax exemption. Its state filings are not good. It's multiplied around the world, different Partners in Health, but it's lionized. And this guy, Paul Farmer, is treated as if he's the modern incarnation of Albert Schweitzer. So you invoke his name and, oh my God, he won a MacArthur grant, he had a PhD and an MD from Harvard. He devotes half his life, half of each year, to helping people in Haiti and Rwanda.
Right.
You just go on and on and on. But when you check the paperwork, helicopters are coming.
Let's just look at that a second.
Interesting.
Hard to get
It's not landing.
Can you see what? It might be a medevac or something. But why would they use that?
Yeah.
So sorry, Charles. Am I understanding, is the net of what you're saying that this Partners in Health utilized seemingly respectable MDs and PhDs to help them sell a fraud?
Exactly. And there hasn't been enough control. They're very clever. They get big names, celebrity names, they get Harvard.
And certainly if you challenge an MD who's helping people in Haiti, you must be a monster.
Right. So in addition, Partners in Health does have annual reports and marketing brochures. Bill Gates' foundation finances it in the early years, of course.
Oh, that's really
course.
Good. Let me interrupt you for 1 second, Charles, because the reason I'm asking all these questions is that I've been trying to talk to that guy Cameron Kyle Seidel. And he was directly linked to Partners in Health through this, he was training nurses or emergency medical technicians in Haiti, and his Twitter account still links. It happened again, Charles. See that? There's certain things that we're talking about that I think they definitely don't want people to become aware of. So
now I get 6 production credits.
6 production credits for holding the thing. Absolutely.
Each time.
Let me get us back
Hope I don't break
here.
it.
No, you're not going to debate. But it's interesting that it seems like there's a real coincidence surrounding certain topics that I bring up. I don't know, people can draw their own conclusions. People can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Look into some of these things that I'm talking about. Is this going to take hold here? I think we're back. We're back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I initially thought this guy, as most people probably did, whoops, we've lost something here. I hope the battery's not dead. I initially thought that this guy, you hear somebody's an MD, they're talking about coronavirus, they're saying something that appeals to you, and this is the essence of the limited hangout. Mm-hmm. This is what gets people to want to talk to these people, give money to these people, listen to what they have to say, give them respect. And when you start to notice strange things about their behavior, I just don't think that anyone is above scrutiny. Certainly I haven't been. These social engineers have been scrutinizing everything I say and do, and even things I haven't said or done, and adding stuff to it since I started doing this. So hopefully people can understand where I'm coming from there. This is a nice part of Central Park for people to see.
And we're heading over towards another Trump Tower and the world headquarters of fake news.
What's that?
CNN.
Oh, right. I was like, wait a minute, the New York Times is down on 48th. Or where is it? No, it's like 8th and 40th.
It's on 40th and 8th, exactly. So if I could just stay focused on Paul Farmer for a second. That's okay. So Paul Farmer's Partners in Health starts doing work with Bill Clinton in Haiti in either 2002 or 2003. Mm-hmm. And at the time, of course, the Clinton Foundation had no authority to do any international work, but they nonetheless began working in Haiti where there's no scrutiny, there's no audits, of course, of the Clinton Foundation. Maybe we go this way.
No relief from misery.
Yeah, and long-standing ties back and forth with Partners in Health. Indeed, Chelsea Clinton was for a time, I don't know if she still is, on the board of Partners in Health.
That's
and
not
Paul
good.
Farmer was a founding trustee or director for the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Health Access Initiative, which was incorporated but not organized on September 29, 2009. So there's a long history of interconnections among Bill, Hillary, Chelsea. There's the famous Woolman rink.
I thought it's the Trump rink.
It should be.
Didn't he refurbish it and put Trump on it?
I don't think he changed it.
I saw that there one time
Really?
years ago.
Oh, this is interesting. This is where the day before I went to Wall Street, this is where I began my career.
What are you talking about?
I was on roller skates, and I'm a good skier.
I remember this story.
I'm a good skier, and I figured I could conquer anything. So I start taking a head of steam up right here, and I go around that corner, and I see like a line of grandmothers. They would keep walking. I'll show you what I did. So you would come around here at speed.
Yeah.
And I had a simple choice to make, and that was, do I knock over the grandmothers,
or take
one for the team? There wasn't a fence there, so I jump in like this, on my stomach, and the heels of my hands get shredded. Yeah. Not like disgustingly so, but really it hurt.
Right.
And the next day, that was June 8th, 1980, June 9th, I had to go in for my first day on the job, meet all these famous people, every one of which wanted to shake my hand.
Oh!
And I just gutted it out.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good story. It's funny to go around and kind of bring these things to life. There is some story about Donald Trump restoring the ice rink there.
Well, he could see it from Trump Tower. And he heard, I think we should go this way.
Yeah.
And up, I guess, to avoid the tunnel. He could see it from Trump Tower. They were making no progress, and he just basically, he had, had this big success as a young person putting up Trump Tower when everyone said he couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So he offered to do it for free, to fix it for free, and he said, ice rink. Who knows anything about ice rinks? Oh, the Canadians. They don't like hockey. So he, calls up some expert in Canada, and it comes in easy. Get it done, eh?
So that's the thing about Donald Trump is I'm not so concerned about what people think about his personality. I want him to get stuff done. A lot of people, including, some Trump supporters, have been troubled that he continues to praise Fauci, praise Birx. Now, how are they related to Paul Farmer and Partners in Health, or are they?
I think Birx's daughter worked for the Gates Foundation, which is
It's not clear if it was her daughter or somebody related through marriage. She does have the same last name, but we need to further investigate that.
But so there's that connection potentially.
Right.
And Fauci, of course, the way Fauci and Birx were involved in the initial decisions not to aggressively lower the price of HIV and AIDS drug medicines in the rich countries.
Right.
But instead, eventually,
Let's just take this in for a moment.
it's pretty busy.
Yeah, that's true. Not normal for a Sunday at this type of nice weather, but definitely a lot more people than last week. And for people from out of town, I think there's a sale on yoga pants, Charles.
It's like the ladies in the Middle East, they wear black burqas, and the ladies in the West, they wear black yoga pants.
Right. So, okay, so we're not really sure. So you were saying about Birx.
So the whole issue, if you remember the narrative, it's very similar now to coronavirus. It's the same sort of narrative.
Right.
You do a thin case, and you say, oh my God, the cost of HIV/AIDS treatment per patient is $10,000 a year, and there's nobody in the developing world. There are billions of people in the developing world who earn less than $1 a day.
Right.
How are they ever going? This is going to go into the developing world, into Africa, and decimate it.
Right.
What we need to do is
vaccinate
billions of dollars. There's no vaccine. But billions and billions of dollars need to be sent into Africa, but we'll do it through Switzerland because it's easier to do it that way.
To steal the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what they did?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Switzerland is where the WHO is.
Absolutely.
So that's what they did. So all these things are money laundering vehicles.
They're
Anytime they start writing $2 trillion relief bills, there's people standing there ready to steal.
Right. They're rife with potential for fraud.
Right.
The accounts, the reports from consultants and auditors about what happened to the money are purposefully vague and opaque.
It's a great question. What happened to the money?
Yeah, Hillary will never write that book. So we're right here.
Dogs are back.
The dogs are back. This is right in the center. This is a really nice part of Central Park here. On a normal spring day like this, you have softball, baseball games going.
Oh, there is one. See, things are a little bit coming back to normal.
Closer, yeah. So back then on Birx and Fauci, each of them were the people evaluating who got grants, U.S. government grants, to advance different potential therapies and treatments and drugs. They were centrally involved in their view of it, HIV and AIDS success story. But I think more critical understanding of that is coming to light now as we look back and see that the early drugs that were rushed into approval, including 3 by Ranbaxy in March of 2003, were diabolical. I mean, there were no real tests. The drugs that were put in samples were not made by Ranbaxy. The WHO was a complete fraud on that one.
Well, you told us how they went to great lengths to falsify documents. They had equipment for aging paper to make it look.
And again,
that's a huge deal.
I'll bring up Catherine Eban's book, Bottle of Lies. It's extensively documented in that book with footnotes and on the basis of whistleblowers and internal documents. There's a question in Bottle of Lies in their original treatment, which is called Dirty Medicine. Why did it take so freaking long to get to the bottom of this? They started on it in 2004, and the settlement, the judgment that actually came together in the end was announced May 13th, 2015. So just as Hillary was ramping up her presidential campaign, she had announced, I think, in April.
Probably just a coincidence, Charles.
Oh, of course.
All these things that we're discussing are coincidental, no doubt.
And a key figure in that whole Ranbaxy settlement negotiation was Rod Rosenstein.
Yeah, and his sister is at the CDC.
Right.
So this is all very close for comfort, and when I start to draw connections between these doctors who know each other, who are making simulations, maybe there's nothing going on, but it's strange that they just don't want to answer the question, have you ever been involved in a medical simulation, Dr. Cameron Kyle?
Right.
Seidel. And he hung up the phone. That's weird behavior to me.
Right. But just now going back again into this train of thought, what's happened in the period, you could say 80 to the present, I would like to pick it up in 88, 89, because that's when, just after Tiananmen Square is right around then, and things begin to open up at that point. And H.W. was the president January 20th, 89. He'd been vice president from January 20th, 81.
He's diabolical.
And still dead, thankfully.
Yeah.
But, and I suppose his wife as well.
Yes.
But in this period, if we go back and we want to grade, whether there's been more good than harm done, in 88 and 89, the active pharmaceutical ingredients for most drugs were not manufactured in China and India.
They were made in the United States then?
And under the control, or at other locations that are more friendly
Canada.
to the United States. Let's see, which way do you want to go? That way, up and around?
Whichever you want.
Whichever
Stay
easier.
over here.
Okay. So,
right, that's heading...
So under the watch, we want to end up
We want to
there.
head more west. Yeah, we'll go. Right.
Under the watch, the helm of Bill Clinton, and then George W., and then Barack Obama, and now Donald Trump, there was a structural shift. Politicians were paid peanuts in speeches, book deals,
Right.
whatever, as the heartland of our manufacturing operations were outsourced, as important data and secrets and trade secrets were sent to India and China, where no one could keep them under proper control.
Wasn't that a lot to do with McKinsey?
Absolutely, and I tweeted out when Andrew Cuomo thought it was a good idea to hire McKinsey to come up with a reopening plan.
It's not a coincidence.
Oh, I know. That's a firm that really needs to be regulated. Because what I see about McKinsey and a lot of these consulting firms, the big ones, is that there are vehicles for oligopolistic industries to get together and use the consulting firm to swap information and fix prices, is my view.
To fix prices?
Sure,
So that right there is very similar to what social engineers are doing. They have a third party do something that sort of removes them from the direct action, but yet still causes the thing to happen.
Right. And so I mean, the notion that McKinsey would be as big as it is, a private company, involved in so many aspects, designing Bill Gates's ridiculous healthcare initiative that by Rajat Gupta himself, simultaneously advising Run Boxy, and never be called to account for any of this. Careful.
That guy's crazy and loud.
That's Ezekiel Emanuel. Want to go that way?
So McKinsey is in there doing all
Everywhere.
this stuff.
McKinsey's everywhere.
And again, it's one of the things that they want to do, Charles, is, we've spoken a lot about Harvard. People know that you went to Harvard. I'm not trying to insult
Feel free.
people who went to Harvard. See, and that's the other thing. Just because someone went to Harvard or someone is involved with Partners in Health, it's extremely likely that there were a lot of people working in lower level capacities in Partners in Health who had no idea that it was a scam.
Yeah, I mean, in the charity world, sadly, there are a lot of people who are decent and gullible.
Right.
And, they tend to be coddled. When you come out with student loans, you got to pay them off. You don't go to work for a charity.
Right.
So they tend to be richer, coddled, spoiled kids. And they're delighted to get sent off to the bowels of Rwanda. And they don't question. They're working with a former president, and they probably don't question anything until he puts the moves on it.
Right. And perhaps it's too late. You're already involved in something. Well, you better not do that or you're going to have some trouble.
So this is Time Warner Center, dead ahead of us. This is...
Oh, right. That's the CNN headquarters.
Right.
I forgot about that.
And that's Trump. That's the Trump International, which is the scene of that great movie.
Where the monster comes to...
It might be the monster movie, but no. It's about... I think it's... I want to say it's a hedge fund titan who goes down or whatever. It's a good movie. The name will come to me. Maybe somebody in Crowdsource the Truth will remember.
I got the comments in my rear pocket and my hand's kind of full.
All right. Well, eventually we'll
Actually,
figure it out.
because the phone I was using for the comments is now our camera. Because they,
So if you
because
see...
of a random accident.
Yeah, so you see how this portion here I want to say it's one of those slanted windows, where the layer where it's slanted. That's the green room. I think in there is the green room that I used to regularly be in 2013 and 14.
Where? Right here on the edge?
Right on the edge there, looking at this view.
Uh-huh.
And then they have many, many floors in there that are seen. We can walk over to the main entrance if you want.
Sure.
You can see this is the cathedral.
Take a look on screen. Is that the green room that I'm looking at right there?
Yeah, I think up in there.
Yeah.
So this is the cathedral of fake news.
Right.
And who lives in this apartment building?
Oh, it's very fancy.
Who is one person who lives in it?
I don't know.
Bill Gates.
Oh, really? I had no idea. Wait a minute. Bill Gates lives in this thing?
Yeah. This is very expensive residential tower.
Oh, I know. That I know. I remember when it was built. It was not 15 years ago.
Do you want to go around?
How long ago was this built, Charles? 10 years ago?
Well, I honestly don't know.
It's not that. I mean, definitely after the Trump International.
Yes, so that's
been here a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, and also here's Christopher Columbus, right?
Yeah.
It's a good statue for people to see.
Oh, this is to the
No, that's not Christopher Columbus.
Valiant's. Yeah, Christopher Columbus is going to be there.
He's over there. Yeah, there he is.
Well, let's go. Should we go over this way?
Yeah. What do you think about Christopher Columbus, Charles? Hero? Or?
I think we haven't heard the whole story about Christopher Columbus. I mean,
Right.
I think that I'm somebody who believes that there was pre-Columbian contact between not simply
Vikings?
Vikings, Europeans, the Welsh, possibly the Chinese. You know, I don't think we've had the complete tale told yet of how this country was, in quote, discovered.
So this is a tricky little intersection. We'll give people an opportunity to see the Trump International.
You might get interference here because of the.
We might. I mean, if anything happens, at this point, we've been able to overcome a number of elements of interference. So
Good.
I hope people are still with us. Here, let me see if we can grab a quick look at comments. Yeah, it looks like we still have people with us, I think. Let me refresh
You could probably
this.
go, Jason, if you want.
Yep. Yeah, still have people. Phase 1 to 3. Next is forced vax returning to work. That's what Maria tells us. I think that's very likely. We've heard.
You can't return to work unless you get a vaccination?
Well, I mean, we've heard.
With what, though?
I don't know. We've heard, Governor Cuomo talking about that being some kind of a component of, reopening the economy, having some way to verify. They're going to slowly roll it out so that some people will be allowed out. I think the first people they'll let out will be the loudmouths who want to yell at people to wear masks. Right.
Antifa will be the first people to.
Right.
It's not going to work like this. I mean, this has been an experiment, a failed experiment in a command economy, where the people issuing the commands are the wingnuts.
Yeah.
And people just are not going to stand for it. If they had tried this in October, they might have been able to lock us down until now. What?
This is the line. There's a Whole Foods inside this building.
Yeah.
And I've noticed actually the line, I was unable to buy groceries yesterday because I had a limited amount of time and I went down there and the line was huge.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a form of loss of freedom. The notion that you can't just walk into a grocery store whenever you want, that's new.
Right.
And now all these people will be upset that they're being photographed in line. But there's something else I thought about, Charles, that's dangerous to people.
What's that?
You've got people walking around with masks. You could have eye covering. You could basically walk around in a disguise and commit crime, and you wouldn't be picked up on security cameras. Facial recognition obviously is thwarted by this. I don't mind that. But I don't like the idea that everybody can walk around like a bandit and do whatever they want. And in fact, they're instructed to do that.
Right. So should we go through here or around it?
Let's go around it because it just seems like getting into those little
obvious
spots can block the signal to the phone. The thing is, it's I know a lot of people walk around with their mobile phones, but we're sending so much data over the mobile network when we're doing a live streaming broadcast that disruptions that might not disconnect a phone call can terminate the broadcast. And although that sound thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the times that it's occurring are all very odd.
So this is the double plus top secret entrance to CNN. It's actually not a secret at all, but
you know about it from being on there. Hey, look at this, emergency response.
yeah. I've never actually been on CNN itself, but I've been filmed from their studios many
Right, because they
times.
had you there, got all your info, and then why don't you tell everybody that story again?
I did go down in early June of, I think it was June 2nd of 2016. I was invited to have an audience with Jake Tapper where he filmed me. And before asking and answering questions, beforehand I had sent a list of questions to them to ask the Clinton Foundation. And the very nice production assistant said to me, well, you know, I have to tell you, Jake's very busy. Before you get into this, oh my goodness, they changed this. Let's see. The entrance used to be right here.
Huh.
This is a hotel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what do you know?
Sculpture. Changed it.
Let's just see if it
So
is
now
around
it is
the
a
corner.
secret.
It used to be right here.
So she's prepping you up for how busy Jake Tapper is.
Yeah, she says he's really, really busy, and Mitch McConnell's waiting for, we have 15 minutes and then he's got to interview Mitch McConnell. And before you get started, I just want you to know that we talked to the Clinton Foundation and they said, this is gone. This must be redoing the entrance.
They said they looked into your information and they decided it's debunked.
No, better. The production assistant said, we don't understand, the Clinton Foundation said, we don't understand why Mr. Ortel continues to ask these questions. We answered all of his questions to his satisfaction.
Oh.
And I said to the production assistants, that's just rubbish. That's not the way I work, and that didn't happen. That never happened, and then it never will happen. So then I go in with Jake, and he's pretty aggressive, but you know, professional.
Right.
And having told me I only had 15 minutes, he then sat there for 40 minutes, keeping Mitch McConnell, you know, and trying to put back on my various points, including, you know, why I felt this was very important. One of the things I said is, listen, Jake, I'm not a Democrat, but if I were, I wouldn't want Hillary Clinton to go up against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's going to kick the crap out of Hillary Clinton.
What did he say to that?
It's like, oh, that's ridiculous. You don't know any, you know, that'll never happen.
Fake Yapper said that?
Fake Yapper.
Did he channel Jeb Bush when he said, that'll never happen?
Pretty much.
That's
yeah.
funny.
So
Jake Tapper.
they're awfully full of themselves, those people.
He wasn't trash talking Monica Lewinsky?
The subject of Monica did not come up.
Do people know that he dated Monica Lewinsky?
Right in the moment.
And then publicly said some pretty disparaging things
Very
about it?
just non-Me Too approved kind of statements
Right.
about, you know, her appearance, her sensuality, and this and that. I mean, he's a bit of a cad, I would say.
Exactly.
And he dated her right, I believe, as they were negotiating, or he took her out on a date, right as, I think just as she was giving her deposition, her false deposition. In
One
that
thing-
time.
Sorry, one thing worth mentioning about what the Clinton Foundation said to you, it's essentially exactly the same thing Angel Uranus said in his tweet, which was incorrect.
Right.
Now, I think we've hit all of our sort
Sure.
of high points on this tour, Charles.
Yeah.
Should we just continue downtown and see what we see?
A little bit. It's up to you. I don't want to tire your arm out.
No, well, that's okay. You're not doing that.
Take care not to take this guy's picture.
Right.
Go bullshit on you.
Yeah.
You got some turkey and vegetables.
It's called
Thanksgiving.
trickle down economy. Not good.
Well, I don't mean to, we shouldn't laugh at that guy. It's a serious problem. I really wish they would have, what is this? New Hope Fertility
Just an
Clinic.
office building.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, well, let's see. We will have an opportunity to pass some pretty interesting office buildings.
That's 787 8.
Is that Teneo?
No, that's Sidley and Austin.
Sidley Austin, right. Oh, right. So the one I was at the other day, it appears there's a Sidley Austin office in there, but it's not the headquarters.
Right.
The headquarters is on 7th Ave.
Right.
We're on 8th here. Do
We could go. It's up to you.
Yeah.
We'll go this way?
Yeah, let's walk by there and see what's going on, just because you never know.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, grab that for a quick second. We'll see how quickly we can make the change as we walk.
I'd say Broadway would be the smarter one to go down.
Yeah, that's cool. We can go through Broadway for a little while. Okay, here we go.
Got it?
I've got it down. Something of a minor inconvenience.
That's the 7th production credit. My goodness.
Exactly. I'm glad you've been keeping.
No, I'm just making. I'm
track.
estimating.
No, but it's. I mean, people are going to notice that this has happened a lot of times, and people will also notice that I've done plenty of broadcasts where that doesn't happen.
Speaking of that, Jason, how many views would you say all the Crowdsource the Truth videos have now garnered?
Well, I don't know. The last time I looked at that on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, it was over 20 million.
Just on Jason Goodman, not on the other ones?
Right. There's also Crowdsource the Truth 2,
and that's
which
just
is a
YouTube.
mirror of Crowdsource the Truth, the Jason Goodman channel. A backup. There's a couple of videos that are on there that aren't on the main channel. There's a telephone call with Dr. Paul Cottrell. There's a couple of phone calls like that. Because sometimes I feel like these people are trying to draw me into a phone call that they can then tell YouTube is an invasion of their privacy.
Right.
And even though that's not a legitimate legal argument, because YouTube is not a legal entity, they can act on things however they choose. They don't need to abide by the rules of a court or the law or whatever. What do you think of this Lenox Hill ambulance, Charles?
Doesn't see, just sort of probably waiting, stationed here.
Yeah. So
we're certainly seeing more ambulances than we used to see.
Right. Well, there's more everything
That's
than
the
there used to be.
That's the Federal Fire Department, EMS.
They look pretty relaxed.
Yeah,
Did you
they
notice
do.
that they're just sort of like kicked back in there?
Have you ever been to Patsy's
Patsy's Pizza Place?
restaurant? It's an old style.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Those buildings will be torn down soon.
There's some story about how Patsy's and Patsy Grimaldi's are kind of somehow related, but two different things.
Yeah. Well, tribal fighting,
right,
is I think basically one way to summarize the history of Italy.
So where is this Sidley Austin building? It's 7th and
I think it's 52nd.
We're getting close.
Yeah.
We've been doing quite a lot of walking, Charles. Let's see what our comments say while we are here approaching Sidley Austin. I'm glad we've been able to recover these multiple. So Barry White says the virus is a psyop. I definitely think there is a psychological warfare component to it.
Careful, just.
Bill Gates was with Richard Branson in artificial meats. Lost a lot of money. Oh boy, what's going on?
Don't. That is a certified balloon.
Yeah.
And with those type of people, you got to worry that they suddenly go berserk and bite you, or
yeah,
which we don't want to have happen.
We don't want anything to do with that.
It's
funny. We're seeing a lot of EMS workers walking around smoking cigarettes.
That's a very smart move. You know, you fail your various tests, and you decide you're going to smoke next to oxygen tanks.
Robert Delio has found Trader Joe's to be more of a mask-free tolerant. Well, that's the thing. They may not allow you into the supermarket without a face mask anymore.
Yeah, for the protection of the workers, they claim.
I just don't think that, there's that...
Do you want to go across 52nd, or what do you want to do?
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, let's 52nd. Here's the scene of complete mayhem.
What do you mean?
The Stephen Colbert studio.
Oh, right. But I don't know if you've seen any of these videos from Dr. Buttar, Charles. Did you see him? He's a very sharp guy. He's a DO and a doctor of osteopathy. So it's not the same as an MD.
He's a bone doctor.
No, I don't know why this truck looks like it could cause problems for us.
Let's go across.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that might interfere with the broadcast. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between a DO and an MD, but he is a doctor that treats patients. And he was a doctor in the Army. And
7th is right there.
Yeah, and he was on Gary Franchi, which is like the Next News Network. and it was a very compelling video. He said a lot of really interesting things. I reached out to Dr. Bitar, sent him an email. Hopefully he'll get back to me and we can have him on the show. It's interesting to see some of these different doctors who are coming out, and there are some who I feel are speaking out and making sense, and then there are others who I feel are trying to, capture the attention of this group that obviously recognizes that something is not right, that we're not necessarily being told the truth. So, whoever is putting the nonsense into the news, if that's the New York Times, the BBC, News Corp, whoever it might be, they obviously don't want a grassroots social media movement to take hold and counteract their stories. So they're infiltrating it with liars. And I think people have seen that.
Yeah. And it's trivial for these well-capitalized establishment companies to send chump change out to chumps.
Right.
Which is why I'm so pleased with the way we did this.
Yeah.
We started on this, and we have thousands of pages of evidence out there that has not yet been challenged by anybody.
Right.
Clinton friends, anybody. It's already out there.
Right.
And it's too late at this stage to say, oh, well, we didn't notice it.
Right. They obviously know, because Angel Urena is cyber stalking you on Twitter. Sorry, not cyber stalking you, cyber slandering you.
Yeah. That's, it just means I'm living rent-free in Bill Clinton's head. Which is not a place I want to be.
So the battery has just kicked on the stabilizer. I guess that's got close to 2-hour battery life when it's powering the phone.
Well,
I did bring a backup plan for that as well, Charles.
You want me to hold it?
Yeah, that's great.
That would be 8.
Exactly.
I'm like those guys who stand and say, you want a free CD of my rap music? They're like, give it to you. They say, what about $10?
You get a key grip credit, Charles.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Will that be on IMDb?
No.
No, not yet.
It's owned by Amazon. IMDb.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did. They own a lot of things like that.
Yeah, they do. But that's just it, is that the select group of very few people own so much of what everybody looks at that it becomes quite easy for them to influence what people see and don't see and all that. We're back.
You're back. Good. Do you want me to hold it?
No. Oh, yeah. Hold that for 1 second, and I'll just put this thing in my pocket.
I'll give that one to you for free.
Thank you. So what else were we talking about there?
Well, you were very close to getting to the Equitable building, which is right over there.
Right, and that's where Sidley Austin moved to right after their offices were destroyed in the World Trade Center. I don't know if people knew about all these connects to Barack and Michelle Obama, Sidley Austin, Bernadine Dorn, Bill Ayers, the Weather Underground. I've alleged that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are weathermen, part of the Weather Underground. Interesting to note, there's something, I think Bernadine Dorn...
Well, I like to jump in and rephrase that, if I might.
Sure.
I think a fair, I'm not saying what you said is unfair, but a way that should not attract any criticism is to say, ask a simple question. How did Barack Obama pass the highest level security clearance? What test was administered to him? And let's take a look at that test. And anybody else who's passed that test should meet us at a nice private airport and get ready to go to Guantanamo. I mean, it's just, for people to be able, with the many checkered aspects of his background, to have access to decide the classification. That's what the President of the United States decides what is classified, the highest level stuff, what's classified, what's not.
Is this 57?
787.
Okay, there we go. That's their building, 787.
Yeah.
And then what is...
It's a big building.
But what
it's
is...
got BNP Paribas, a very big French bank.
French bank.
Yeah. I got on the other side of you? Or?
Yeah. So this is the AXA Equitable building. Now they're an insurance company, right?
Well, yeah. And so just to put this in perspective, and it's, it's going to sound worse than it is, but the chairman of AXA is I think now the chairman of the Bilderberg Group.
Oh. What do you mean that sounds worse than it is? That's about as bad as it gets.
Well,
and the law firm in question is in that building.
Yeah. But again, this is prime real estate. There are lots of important firms in this building.
Lots of Bilderbergers.
Well, and AXA is one of the largest insurance companies in the world. I mean, it's not, if you're going to put together one of these meet and greet societies where people talk and plan how to dominate the world in the guise of a foundation, you're going to think about approaching the guy who, by the way, is a personal friend of Fabienne's.
Wow.
You know,
so Charles, what do you think about opening a hamburger restaurant called Build-A-Burger?
That would be good. That could work.
I'm just full of ideas, Charles.
Yeah.
I tell you.
That's it. Cease and desist on crowdsourcing the truth. I'll operate the French fry machine.
There you go.
You can do the burgers, but they're going to have to be beef, not the what's that?
No,
fake
grass-fed
stuff?
beef.
What's that stuff?
Oh, Impossible Burger.
Or what it's called, something else? Beyond Meat?
Beyond Burger, right.
Or Beyond Meat, I think.
So this is something I've been seeing advertised all over the place. There's a Beetlejuice play now.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
And this, I went, not to be a ghoul, but on the day that Lehman went bankrupt, early in the morning, during the weekend, I came here just to look and see what was going on. And that was in September of 2000, I think September of 2008. And around that time frame, I was moving out of an office that I was in shortly thereafter. You know, I didn't have that much stuff, so I just put it in a box. And I was in the subway.
Yeah.
And somebody looked at me and said, "Oh, you poor dear."
Because you thought you lost your job?
They said to me, you know, you must be devastated. You look like a nice person. You've lost your job. Those people.
Sorry. The sound went again. It's those people that did what?
Is it on now?
It is.
So they, so she looked at me and she said, you know, you don't have to be shy. You don't have to be ashamed of losing your job. I said, no, I have absolutely nothing to do with Lehman Brothers. My ex-wife used to work there for a time, but she was fired in 2001. You know, I have nothing to do with Lehman Brothers.
It's a pretty lengthy conversation.
Which?
That you were having with this person on the subway. All right, so stand by. We're going to switch over to the new audio here. We should be back in a second. Here we go.
All right.
Okay, we're back.
Good.
And then this thing, no, you didn't screw it up. It's I unplugged the battery. Where everything is operating on, you know, sort of triple redundant backup right now.
But there's Lehman.
Well, but there's Barclays.
Barclays took it over. Took over a portion of it. Yeah.
See, that struck me. I saw that. I noticed that the other day, and I was like, was that always here? Because that's a...
No, they just that facade has always been there, but they just changed the signage.
Right. Well, Charles, we're getting close to the end of the normal duration of Sunday with Charles, but I think we should take people through Times Square while we're here. It's become sort of, you know, more of a checkup.
We could get
there's another one of those off-road bikes.
You know, we could get your picture taken with Comey.
Comey?
Yeah, one of the dwarfs, Dopey.
Dopey, right. Yeah. So you were saying earlier, Charles, that you're anticipating perhaps volatility or downward movement in the stock market. Yeah. Although this is not stock advice. No, neither of us are doctors.
Right.
Nothing we say should be taken as anything other than...
Right. I myself tonight will be watching the opening of the Asian markets, which happens in a few minutes, like 5 hours or so, 4 hours.
What did that guy just look at me like that for?
Let's move over here.
He just looked at me and smiled in a weird way.
Yeah. So what I think people are going to begin to understand is that we have had now almost a month and a half, 6 weeks, or actually I should say, all of April will effectively be a period where there were no revenues, no material revenues derived by big companies serving the United States and Europe.
Do you see that ad for Motherland, Charles?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Think about that. Think about that. Think about that. Think about that. It's not the Star of David, it's a pentagram, not the Star of David. And the second I started looking at it, our audio went crazy again.
Jesus.
I'm a little tired of fixing it. I don't know if I want to do that. I think we might just stay with this.
All right.
And keep telling us your story.
Well, people can hear it? Okay.
They can hear it, but it sounds noisy.
All right. Well, we'll be
done pretty soon.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I was on the. So 1/3 of the second quarter, the whole month of April, which means that the revenues will be obviously sharply lower compared to last year for many companies, and expenses. We've got the light.
I'm just looking at that. Cops doing something.
The expenses will be mostly there. So the reported profits of many public companies starting in July, when they're reported for the second calendar quarter of the year, are going to be atrocious. And people are going to start doing finer analysis.
What's going on with the cops? I'm sorry, Charles. Let's look at this for a second. So we're seeing some police activity, which is unusual over the last several weeks. So sorry, please continue about the revenue.
So there'll be finer, sharper analysis of just how bad, how low stock prices may fall. And also people will start thinking about the second and third order consequences when individuals and businesses stop paying rent and stop paying mortgages. What's the impact of that going to be on banks, on property values, etc.? So I'm fearful that following this meteoric rise up from 18,000 on the Dow to 24,000, we could now go into a period where we're just downward pressure again.
Wow.
And
doesn't sound good.
And the Fed is basically careful. We do not have to wait. Sorry. The Fed has basically already fired its bazookas.
Right.
And you can't keep doing this forever.
Right.
So this is a moment in time